People always ask how I balance my family life with 400 shows a year. I'm just doing what I love with the people I love. It's my magic life.
I like Wes Iseli. I like everything about him.
All right. Well, today we have someone from the other side of the world visiting us today. J. Scott Berry has been on my radar since like my first year of being a professional magician. I think I saw his lecture in 1997, and I have kept up with this guy ever since. I had VHS tapes of J. Scott Berry's. That's how far we go back. And everybody, it's J. Scott Berry. What's up, buddy? How are you?
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, back in my day, we had these big boxes you had to put your stuff on. The phones were stuck to the wall.
They were.
They were dumb.
So you're in Australia right now, and it's 6 a.m. for you. And I said before we got on the thing, man, 6 a.m. Are you used to getting up this early in the morning for different things? Is this
I have been, yeah, very much since sort of everything shifted with the lockdowns for all of us. And when the shows diminished, I shifted over to Zoom casting and giving Zoom shows. And now I've got a dozen or so students from around the world who, if they're in the US afternoon, it's 6 a.m., 6 a.m. here. So I just shift my daily schedule accordingly.
Wow. So I know one of those students, and he comes over my house. We play magic together. I'm just picking out stuff and showing him, and we just hang out. Not teaching him magic, but I'm kind of just showing him some stuff. You're his teacher. You are his teacher. But
everyone's his teacher. I have a Jeet Kune Do concept. Bruce Lee had the idea of Jeet Kune Do, meaning you take the best from every source you possibly can. You learn from everyone, and you create your own system. So yeah, that's what I encourage him and all my other students. They're like, well, what about so-and-so? I'm going, go for it. Learn whatever you can from everyone. And you assimilate it. That's how you become a true artist.
And, I told Natalie before I met my wife back in 2005, I said, I studied under a person that was like, I don't know how you say it. A con artist,
that's a good.
A con artist.
Yes.
A magician that ripped off everyone and everyone in the world. And I learned so much from him, what not to do, how not to treat people. I mean, even bad influences are good influences if you twist it the right way.
Absolutely.
Houdini autographs. I saw him tee them. I saw him drop old tea on them, take them outside, rub them in dirt, and sell them on eBay. I saw that. So it's like, I didn't know that was a thing.
I didn't know either, but I agree. Even a bad show, people say, "Oh, that was a really bad show." I say, "What did you learn from it?" You learn what not to do, right? Why? What didn't work, and why? There's your lesson.
Absolutely. Yeah. We had something in our show yesterday. We did a theater show yesterday, and just my timing is off for one trick, and it felt like the entire show was off because I kept replaying that thing in my head. So it's like, what did you learn from it? Every single show you learn from it. Mm-hmm. But it was just something so small. She didn't even notice, but it bothered me so much. So
isn't that amazing how when we have an attention to detail, I mean, like really this commitment to excellence, the smallest things can be like, oh man. And I mentored with Johnny Thompson, the great Thompsoni, and I knew Channing Pollock really well. I mean, got some of the true great grandmasters, and they were the same. I remember seeing Johnny Thompson on stage in Reno, Nevada, and for me, it was an impeccable show, and he was all disappointed because he dropped a scarf. He goes, oh man, I shouldn't have dropped that. I go, what? I mean, you picked it up. What? And he was all bummed. Like you say, he was like, oh man. And Channing, come on, good grief. He's like the grandmaster of grandmasters. And he told me, he says he felt like he never had a perfect show.
Wow.
I'm like, well, what? He goes, yeah, there was always something, a small thing, the audience doesn't know. But that's it. It's life.
He also had those good looks too. So he had that extra movie star quality to him. I'll never have that. So, Australia, how long have you been in Australia? Is that something I didn't know? You were in America, right?
Yeah, I was born in the USA, grew up in Reno, Nevada. kind of went back and forth a bit as a child between the East Coast and West Coast, following my father. But when I was 17, I moved down to Hollywood, got a job working at Hollywood Magic, spent 3-4 years in LA, and then got launched off to Europe from the 1982 FISM. So I was the Magic Castle's representative for the FISM in 1982, and that kicked off my career in Europe. So I spent a whole lot of time traveling. That set off a world kind of touring the world, performing, and then ended up lecturing as well, and sort of ended up landing in Australia. For personal reasons, I ended up with raising a couple kids here, and yeah, it's just there are places to be, and this is one of them.
There you go. So 1982, that was the year Lance won the Grand Prix, correct?
That's right. Yep.
But what did you compete? What category?
I was in General Magic, and I took silver, so second to Lance, basically.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And he and I were real good friends. People always, even now, people try to say, "Oh, but you were in competition." I go, we were like in the same hotel. We're having breakfast together. We're chilling out, watching the shows together. So he and I have been just obviously colleagues, but mutual respect friends since we were both 1920. 19 or 20, not 1920. Different. But great guy. I always say Lance is one of the true gentlemen of magic. And so, yeah, I think that the win for him was perfect because it set in motion, obviously, all his career in Las Vegas, and what the show he ran at the Monte Carlo still to me is one of the best magic shows I've ever seen. And he's incredible gentleman.
And you learn the good guys can win in magic. You don't
it's
have to
always nice to see that, isn't it? Yeah.
So how'd you get started in magic?
Very good question. Well, when I was 3 years old, my mother put me into tap dance class. That was like the key thing. I'm sure I was just a handful. She's like, "Oh my God, this kid's driving me crazy. Get him out of the house." And so she's like, "All right, there's this tap dance thing. We're going to start, get your energy out, take it down there." And I took to it, not specifically because tap, but it was singing and dancing and movement. And the key thing was that I recall vividly, actually one of my oldest, most vivid memories was the countdown to the annual recital. You do the thing and then, we're going to have the recital and all the parents are here. And that's what really, I was like, that was like opening night kind of energy. There's a date on the calendar, and then you're counting down, get your costumes and your photos. And for the performance, that was my very first time solo on stage. And I'm sitting there singing and dancing, and the parents are smiling and laughing. I'm thinking, I could do this. It was like I was at home. So that from that moment on, the stage has been my happy space. That as a performer, whatever's going on in your life, you totally release it, you get on stage, and man, you're creating wonder. And that was it. That set in motion kind of my whole career. And then from there, I got a magic kit. My mom got me a magic kit when I was 5 years old. I was in every play in school, partly because I was fearless. The student, the teachers would know that I wouldn't choke. Well, whether I was good or bad on stage, it didn't matter. I wouldn't choke backstage and say, "I'm afraid, I can't go." And then I was in a string orchestra. I was in a boys choir, and then in musicals in high school. So it was all this any chance to get on stage and perform, that set the stage for my entire career in magic.
You said that, you just feel at home on stage and all your worries go away. You can't explain that to somebody that doesn't know being on stage. I had to perform the day my mom died. I got the news when we woke. My alarm went off 5 minutes. The phone rang 5 minutes before my alarm went off.
Yeah.
Mom died. Well, we have a theater show tonight. We have 1,000 tickets sold. We have to be there.
Yeah, show must go on.
I was crying on the way to the show. Did the show. I did the show, and it was just, that was all gone.
Right.
It was after the show, it all just piled back on my shoulders, but I was relieved. And you said you studied under Johnny Thompson. I think it might have been David McGee. I might be totally wrong here, but I have a story in my head that Johnny Thompson's son died, and he felt the only way he could have relief was performing, because he just dwelled on that 24 hours a day. I totally get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. And because so many have, I mean, it's one of the great fears is the fear of being on stage or public speaking. Most don't get that at all. They're like, oh my God, I'm so scared when I'm on stage and nerves. And I'm like, well, there are some people, some of us who it's just the opposite, where that is the place we look forward to. And that's the kind of the natural born showman, I think.
Some of it's on and off, and some of it actually is opposite. You've met those entertainers at conventions, and man, you're my idol. I've looked up to you, and they just get into a shell. They don't want to talk to you because it's one-on-one interaction. Our little girl is that way. She can be on stage and do anything we tell her to do. But then after the show, people can have your autograph, and she's real meek and doesn't want to talk to strangers. But on stage, she's blowing kisses and doing spins, producing doves, but then she goes backstage, and
isn't that funny? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just saying she's not big on the meet and greet afterwards. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny, the balance of introvert and extrovert, because people are like, oh, well, are you an introvert or an extrovert? I said, depends on where I am. On stage, you give it all. You pour your heart, you open it up, you give everything you've got. But, if I'm at the grocery store, nobody has a clue. I'm just very calm, you just do your thing. And as you said, sometimes if people recognize you, you're like, yeah.
We're funny at a party. We got invited to a wedding recently, and we were just wallflowers. I don't dance.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to take over the event. I'm not going to do magic. So I don't know what to do.
Right. Unless you're hired to perform. Right. I'm the same way with me. People are like, oh, you went to a wedding. Did you perform? I wasn't hired to perform. My job, I'm a regular person enjoying the event. I'm not going to start, hey, let me show you some magic. Yeah. It's a very interesting line that a lot of performers have.
Yeah. Yeah. But I don't know how to relax at a party. It's either off or on, and I don't want to be on because I'll take over the party. So I'm just off.
Yeah. Wind him up, right? Wind him up and let him go.
No, we don't want to do that because then it'll be my we don't want to do that.
He'll just take over. Absolutely.
So what was your active FISM? I've just found out about this. By the way, congratulations. I didn't know you did FISM at 82.
I'll back up just a bit, because I'll tell you, this will kind of chill into a bit of a story. It'll also tie in Johnny Thompson. Okay, so this is where we'll get. Now, when I was 16, now I grew up in Reno, Showtown. I mean, it's like the lesser known cousin or brother of Las Vegas, but we had the casinos and the gambling and all of that. And of course the showrooms. But the odd thing was there were no other magicians. I mean, I was completely insulated. I learned from books. I got the bug, but there was no clubs. I didn't know really anything about magic clubs or conventions. So it was a very interesting. I learned to create within a bubble. So all right, I'll learn and create, how to build stuff. And of course I saw, the Doug Henning, Doug Henning's first shows came out. Oddly enough, you got Kreskin behind you. Kreskin had the TV show back then. So I'm always watching him going, okay, is that, is it magic tricks or is it like real, because he presented it right in the middle. You didn't quite know. It's like, oh man. But one day, so I was just 15 or 16. I open up the Friday Entertainment magazine, and I saw an article. There's an ad. It says the great Thompsoni performing at this John Esquaga's Nugget, big showroom in town. And bold as can be. I can't even believe I did this. I literally went, oh yeah, went to the phone, and I called backstage. And I said, hi. And I said, I'd like to talk to the great Thompsoni, because that's what it said. And lo and behold, he answered. They literally channeled me straight to his dressing room, and he was totally gracious. He's like, "Oh, no, of course, I'm a magician too." No clue who this guy is. But it was a watershed moment. We have these moments in life that we realize, had we done this or not, had we turned right instead of left, everything would have been different. We wouldn't have met certain people. We wouldn't have done certain things. And the very fact that he answered, invited me down the next day. He said, yeah, come on down. I'd love to meet you, come backstage while we're getting ready. And he and Pam were so gracious, just completely welcoming. He always set me down, tell me what you want to do, what you're, it was like, wow. So he's really the first major magician I had the chance to meet. And the fact that he was so welcoming, it set in motion a lifelong friendship. And for the show, because I was under 21, he says, we're about to get ready. He goes, oh, you can't go out in the theater. And I'm like, oh man, all this getting ready. He goes, no, I got you covered. He took me up backstage, all the way up to the spotlight booth. They had 2 chairs for me and my girlfriend there, and we got to watch the whole show. Anthony Newley was the headline. He was the opening act. He and Pam did their half-hour kind of opening act show. So it was epic. Yeah, and without that was this series of things. I always think, man, if Johnny hadn't answered the phone, if I hadn't had the sheer chutzpah to pick up, sometimes you just got to go for it. I said my whole life and career would have been different. Because he set in motion. He said, look, because I said, oh, I'd love to perform like in shows, it's beautiful showrooms. I said, I want to do what you're doing, basically. And he says, well, you really should get to LA. He says, he says, when you're out of school, you should. And he told me about the Magic Castle. And he said, they've got this junior member group. You probably should, check that out. And he kind of set an interesting little life path. And he said, if you want to be here, doing it here, the agent's book from LA. He says, that's the way to go. So a year and a half later, I'm on my way to Los Angeles. Got a job immediately when I moved to Hollywood. Got working at Hollywood Magic, which was the mecca, that was the ultimate magic shop. Everyone who was anyone came in there. And then through a series of steps, I joined the junior members, and then Peter Pitt, Bill Larson, Irene, of course, and Diana Zimmerman were so impressed with my audition. They said, oh, we got to get him on stage. We got to get him on as the main performance. So they went to the board of directors, and they changed the rule. Basically, they had up until that time, no one under 21 could perform at the Magic Castle. It was just, that was the hard, fast rule. And so they did. They basically, and so I was the youngest performer to ever perform a week in the Palace of Mystery. And that set in motion. Everything kind of set, springboard to the next. And then a year after that, they said, all right, well, we're going to have you represent us at FISM. And that set me off to the 1982 FISM. And, that was, again, the springboard off into Europe. So,
wow.
Amazing backstory, bit of backstory.
No, that is awesome.
I love how it all just fell right into place. It's perfect. Obviously, it was what you're supposed to do. It all fell right into place, everything. That's really cool. I love it.
Dude, I never made any phone calls.
You should have made
we had Brett Daniels on here, and Brett Daniels just he looked up in the phone book and called found Doug Henning's company and called and just said, hey, you know the trick that you did, the water torture cell. You wouldn't be selling any props from the show, would you? And he's like, yeah, but I'm just a kid. I don't have a lot of money. He paid him like $100 a month until he paid off the water torture cell, and they shipped it to him in advance. All he gave him was a $100 deposit. I never made calls.
How incredible is that?
Right? Come on.
Yeah. And I always find it's only when you can look back on it that you really connect the dots. When it's happening, you don't realize where it's going. But now I can look back and go, oh man, there's all these pieces of the puzzle. If they weren't there, if this person wasn't, that decision, that phone call, Brett Daniels, again, having the chutzpah to just call up the Doug Henning, It
was about your age, though. It was about.
Yeah. And every one of us of that era. Even the ones who we all went off to FISM, the Lance and Michael Amar and Daryl, and many of the others who were that coming out of the junior member group and that generation. Everyone had their unique story of the weird and wonderful path that got them there and who inspired them. And it's extraordinary. Michael Amar, to listen to his story, same thing. You're like, how did you end up at the world champion of close-up magic? He was learning marketing in West Virginia, college. How did you?
Crazy, man. It's crazy. So your music. So you win FISM and all that. You over in Europe. Were you playing music the entire time since high school? I mean, did you ever have a band and do only music, or has it always been combination of both?
That's again good question. First, I'll mention that on the YouTube, it's actually the act you asked about.
Okay.
It isn't from the FISM, but from that same year, Milt Larson, excuse me, Milt booked me for the It's Magic show, and that's the best surviving tape of that act. So they filmed it reasonably high quality, and I can send you the link, but it's on my YouTube. But that's the easiest way to say, the fire fog, all sorts of cool stuff to say, wow, you were doing all that when, that was the FISM act, basically. And as far as music, it's funny, there's always been this undercurrent. Yeah, I grew up playing a number of instruments, played drums in school band, and then picked up guitar, and it's kind of all the different elements to kind of learn enough of each instrument so I could compose. And a funny thing happened right about 1983. The Magic Castle often had, private parties, or a small TV company would come in. So I was doing they filmed a TV show in the Palace of Mystery at the castle. But the music I was using was under copyright, and for live performance, no one cared. But the moment that they had to air it, so they overdubbed it with this horrible, and now we can get good, copyright-free music. Oh my gosh, when I saw it on TV, I was just so embarrassed. I'm going, that's not the music. No. So that was it. From that point, I realized, all right, and synthesizers were just breaking out, and workstations, and just the technology had hit where you could create with, enough focus and effort, you could create your own music. So that's where I set in motion, where I basically started initially writing and producing my own background music for the shows, and then enough momentum on that. And of course, after the show, people are like, oh, do you have a cassette or CD of the music? I'm going, well, I could. Well, if you're going to buy it, I'll get it, and yeah, that was it. So by 1990, I released my first CD, which this whole side career took off. Whereas, got onto the new age radio stations, and then I'm interviewing on the radio station. They're going, there's this other guy with your same name. It's also J. Scott Barry. I went, yeah, he's my evil twin, or, But so, I mean, up until now, basically, I've sort of go back and forth, but most of the music still is designed to either support real strong background music. So I make it, for the most part, copyright free to magicians. I just say, look, give me credit if you can, but use it. So I've tried to offer that, because there up until now, again, now there's a much more copyright free music available that's of high quality, but 20 years ago it was much harder to find. But yeah, I'm still producing music. I'm sitting right here, I've got a piano on this side and speakers, and basically in a hybrid music video production studio.
So do you go out and do music shows? Like, would anybody hire you for like a street festival or a theater gig just to perform music, or?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Everything changed a few years ago for all of us. But yeah, I've done in tours where I'm booked as a musician. Okay. And sometimes I've done shows where they want me to do both, which is not as often, but they'll say, hey, I see on your website you do magic and music. Can you do both? I'm going, how much can you pay? Yeah, not that direct, but essentially we are guns for hire.
Right.
And if the festival says we'd love to have you doing one session of music and one of magic or whatever, I mean, even at the Blackpool, even in FISM, the Blackpool FISM in 2012, they had me doing music as well as a side evening thing. He says, bring your guitar, and as everyone's having their after hours thing, we'll mic you up, and I'm sitting there playing a troubadour right after emceeing the big stage show. So it's like, well, yeah, cool.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really. So you got your music, you got your magic. All right, here's something, and just I'm throwing it out there.
Go for it.
You can only have one: magic or music.
Oh,
It's funny. That's such a tough. It's like magic's my first love, but music's the mistress. You know, I don't know how to say it. You know, they're intertwined. I mean, there's no question that my first and foremost, not only claim to fame is magic. You know, in music, I'm sort of a minor player, where in magic, it's, different. But yeah, the simple answer is magic. Just to cut to the chase, since you asked for a real direct,
I know it's
could
hard.
you have one if it was like, yeah, exactly. No, magic for sure.
Okay. So people that aren't magicians listen to this and you're like, oh, they overdubbed. Yeah, but you still get to see the magic. Think about the E.T. soundtrack over top of Jaws.
right.
I mean, it doesn't, you can't. It
Exactly.
makes it totally different.
Right. The drama, and anyone who's a stage performer, you know this. Come on, you create your illusion. The music is integral in the whole production, just like a film soundtrack. Imagine epic film soundtracks like Star Wars with some, silly, funky little soundtrack. It'd be like, no. So as an artist, the attention to detail is, you're very, you might go through dozens and dozens of sound. Oh, no, that's not it. And then you choreograph to the piece of music you choose, and it builds to the crescendos, and there's a whole lot of attention to detail. And yeah, if you just overdub any random piece of music, it's not going to be the same.
Yeah. And the beats to the music, the muscle memory of the routine, it is you. It is part of what you're doing. It's so out there saying that, but it is. It becomes
no, it is, because you put on the wrong song for the
exact same trick
or whatever. You're like, this is not right. This doesn't work.
And sometimes you got to run with that wrong song because it's playing, and you're going, "This isn't right." It's
So
not the right. You're trying to signal to the backstage.
We have illusions that we take out of our show for several years and we put back in, and it's like, what song did we have with that? And sometimes we misnamed the song, so it'd be like, J. Scott Berry #1. No,
that's exactly right. Yeah, you don't.
It needs to be called Sword Basket, not J. Scott Berry #1. So it's like, so yeah, that's another thing too. So.
I think we get I mean, there's an intrinsic way, I think, as a performer thinks of the music. As you say, we count the beats, we count the timing, we get to see it. We don't look at the notes on the page like an orchestra might. And a few years back, I was actually performing the full orchestra behind me. And it was in Scotland at this beautiful event. And I timed myself. I said, give me the score ahead of time, not the written page, but let me hear it. And I sat and studied in my mind, and I designed my show accordingly. And at the end of it, the orchestra leader, the conductor, was like, how did you know all that without looking at the music? I said, because I memorized the music. I memorized the segments of this. And because he could only think of it as notes on a page, the score, he was like, how do you do that? I said, well, I don't know how you do what you do, so we're even,
So I listen to it and I play it in my head and I go through the beats, but I can't.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And again, it's integral. It's so specific. And even the flow of a show, you want the upbeat, the high energy, then the soft emotional part, like a film soundtrack. It's this emotional journey.
And it could take weeks to find the right song.
Oh, yeah.
But once you have it, we're committed to it for the rest of our life. We'll always play that one song with the Sword Basket. So you better take your time choosing it. Yeah,
right.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's as important as every other piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Because you've seen, again, likewise with the music, I've seen acts that do amazing stuff, and you think that music isn't right. It's just that, and I'm like, maybe I can help you with the music choice. You try to gently say, well, you got any critiques? I said, the performance was great. Let's talk about that straight, the music they're using. So, yeah.
We always try to use royalty-free music just because of, uploading it to YouTube, Facebook, all that stuff, because they'll just mute it.
Yeah.
And it's
I know. Oh, yeah.
That's not
Yeah,
then
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why making a choice early on to produce my own stuff was, wasn't easy. It never easy to take, hundreds of hours to sit and work out your own music. But the long run, you say I can put my stuff up, even the stuff from years ago, and they don't mute it. So
right.
Yeah.
So am I right when I say like 1997, 99 is when I first met you? I mean, if you had been over in Australia for, I don't know how many years now. How long have you been in Australia?
I moved, interestingly enough, I ended up mostly in Europe. I mean, from 1985 onwards, I landed after for the 82 FISM set in motion a whole bunch of shows in Europe. I headlined the 85 FISM in Madrid. And then after that, I sort of stayed in Europe. Enough work was where I just shifted, and I lived in Paris, worked at the Folies Bergère, the Alcazar de Paris, and a lot of these kind of the clubs in Paris. And I mean, Europe is small, relatively. You can get, in a few hours to country, and you get on a train, and so from Paris to say, oh, we got a gala in Brussels, Belgium. Okay, that's 3 hours on a train. You get there like anything else. If you drive or whatever. So a whole lot of momentum in Europe throughout the basically 80s and 90s, lots of shows, lots of corporate conventions, close-up stage. And that's where I really expanded beyond that initial FISM act. Because, as a working pro, if the phone rings and they say, can you do a close-up act? You're like, yes. You don't say no. That's my rent for next week or whatever it is. And, you learn the expansion of talent if you're willing to constantly grow. Say, well, the best thing I ever learned is to never stop learning. Right? You never stop learning. And the lectures were part of that. Is like, people say, well, can you lecture? You say, yeah, I can, of course I can talk about what I'm doing. And then someone wants to book you for lectures. And with each lecture, I approach a lecture as a show. It's a 2-hour show. So that was my mentality as well. So I got to entertain, I got to surprise, amaze the magicians. So it's constantly forcing that commitment to excellence. I'm thinking, I got to go in there and fool the magicians. It's part of the game. If you can fool them, they're going to be amazed. All throughout the 90s, I was performing and lecturing. So it's quite possible. Yeah, that would have been right. Mid-90s, 97, we met. And I moved to Scotland in the early 2000s. Basically ended up over in Scotland for 5 years. And my basically girlfriend, who became my wife at the time, lived in Australia. She was from Australia. So when we thought, well, okay, if we're going to have a couple kids or that was a life decision to move to Australia. So from 2007 on, I was basically based here, but then traveling, still touring around the world, around the country here. And that's where I ended up. So I'm here for at least a little while longer while I get my kids up and, kind of making sure they get up and going and off to the world. So
how old are they now?
My son just turned 13 and my daughter just turned 16. Wow. So they're both in high school. What they have high school here is 7th grade to 12th grade. They don't have middle school. So they're basically already counting down. My daughter, I'm already saying, well, a couple years, what are you going to do? Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wow.
Are either one of them interested in magic?
Funny in that, not specifically.
Yeah.
I mean, I never tried. They grew up with magic. And there was a time when my daughter, like you're saying with yours, was so excited to be on stage. Yeah, she wanted to, and then she wasn't content to just be my assistant. She wanted her own spots. That was very cheeky. She says, and she says, I want to do my own thing. And then she had her little act that she did in kind of school shows as well. But her natural focus now has gone into art. She's an incredible hand, old school. She sits there and illustrates. And so I've watched her talent for the last 4 years go from real rough drawings to just stuff she shows me. And I'm just like, I can't do that, man.
Wow.
So I just figured best to encourage their natural flow rather than say you have to be this or that. And then my son, he's a crazy gamer. He's totally into the Roblox games and all these things. And, I said, all right, good. Whatever you learn from, whatever you're having fun in life, go for it.
Yeah.
You had that, what's the guy's name? The Asian guy, the Bruce Lee. I was trying to say Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
I had Bruce Willis in my head. It wasn't working at all. But
Bruce.
Bruce Lee, you said Jeet Kune
Do. Jeet Kune Do.
So I tell everybody, go to every lecture.
Yeah.
And sometimes it is, David Copperfield's lecturing. That may be an awful lecture because he just says, I won 23 Emmys. I'm great. At 82, I'll walk through a wall. He just tells you stories. And this guy you've never heard of blows you away because he did research and he wanted to make it a fun act. And it wasn't just a name. And these people just blow you away. I got burned out. I worked at a magic shop as well when I was 18 years old while I was going to college for marketing. And everything was just card tricks. Every new trick that came out was card tricks. I kind of got burned out. Plus girls at the time, right? I was
major distraction.
Choice. And then I realized that there's animal magic, there's comedy magic, there's silk magic, there's rubber band magic. I'll never learn it all. And I've never gotten burned out since, right?
Right.
Learn it all, like you said, right? Now, come 30 years in the future, I get a job, I get a sponsor with Pepsi. I hate liquid magic. Now I got to keep up with it. Now I got spills. Somebody got to clean it up. But you know what? I learned all of that liquid magic. And they said, can you do liquid magic? And like you said, I need to eat next week. Yes, I do.
Yes, of course you do.
Specialist.
Yeah.
Yes,
you just draw upon this huge resource. And if it isn't something you know in your mind, you learn it. You pull out Tarbell, you pull out the Bright Books and you go, or YouTube or whatever. You can pretty much learn anything. But
right.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yes. So, silk magic, I'm not into silk magic. I think I have one silk trick in my show. And, but my little girl, that fits her character. I can make my little girl produce flowers, feather flowers. I'm not going to use feathers, but my little girl, it fits her character. I got a job in Carbon Arrow. Well, now they're brainstorming just anything. And everything I've ever learned, I'm trying to spit out to help them. So yes, tell your students.
To find them. Well, exactly. And one of the things that my sort of with each student, I take them, I say, start where you are, use what you've got, do what you can. Very famous Arthur Ashe quote. And it's so, because we all have this, once I get this trick, then once I get the money, then no. You start where you are, pick up one sponge ball, show me how much wonder you can create with that. Let's build a foundation of sleight of hand. But I don't try to get them to be like me at all. I'm like going, look, I learned from Albert Goshman and Patrick Page and all these others, but I'm not trying to emulate them. I take a little bit of this, a little bit of Richard Ross, and so that's what I tell my students. I say, look, you want to do silk magic? We'll totally focus on silk magic. You want to do card magic? Let's brainstorm card magic that's fits your character, that's original. Whether again, that's idea of general magic versus close up versus, some say, I don't do coins. I say, great. No worries. There's so many other things. Just like you said, it's an incredible palette of possibilities in the art of magic. And you say, again, you'll never learn it all. Right. You can't. It's too big. So, yeah.
And that's a great thing. And we know you as a teacher, that is just awesome that you go where they are and you help them massage that. Because I know a couple of magicians just come to the top of my head that are teachers. And I feel like they make clones to send to the world. Right. And that's a totally different thing. That is totally different because there's so much magic out there. You don't need to do that. But
it's a funny thing. I read a lot of the Masculine and Devant, Our Magic, and it became Masculine on the Performance of Magic, very well-known book. And his emphasis on high art really stuck with me. I read this when I was 18, and his idea that you can't be a copyist and be an artist. Just doesn't work. You could create the perfect Mona Lisa replication, but guess what? You aren't Leonardo da Vinci. You just aren't. So my attitude is with the students is like, you got to find who you are. You got to be who you are. I'm going to help you with that. I'll coach you with that. I'll encourage that. But you don't become an artist until you lose the fear of being yourself. Right? I mean, you see people who are copying. Okay, great. That was a great illusion. You just copied Pendragon, or you just copied, that was the picture perfect. Well done. Picture perfect copy of this person. You're not an artist yet. You have to break past that. It's no different in music. I can sit there and play Gordon Lightfoot or whatever it is. Okay, great. I'm copying Gordon Lightfoot. Okay, but if one wants to truly excel, it takes a level of genuine originality.
Now we're just going to talk esoteric or out there,
Cool.
So I don't know Gordon Lightfoot. So you're playing music and it's like, well, that's really good. I don't know that. People see this guy copying Pendragons. They don't know Pendragons. They're getting compliments. So that's distracting in their head, but they're not elevating themselves,
Right.
I see where they could get mistaken. My wife has a selling table after the show. I'm signing autographs, taking pictures, but she's working and everybody's complimenting her. I'm doing the step and repeat and taking pictures. I don't really get a chance to talk to people, but they're like, hey, the show was great. Mm-hmm. But if I was copying Pendragons and they didn't know Pendragons, you would get a very false sense of gratitude there. So,
yeah. And I mean, there's always areas for a cover band. I'll use music as the example. I'm not dissing anyone who's, learning. And all of us, I think along the way, we were emulating others. We said, oh, I want to be like them. And I want to be, it's just the natural learning process. And, some people stay there. Some magicians will stay at that level, and others who really push to excel. So again, that's why I emphasize that to all my students right away. They say, all right, number one, where are we? Where have you been? Where are we? Where are we going? Let's set the plan. Let's set these pieces in motion. You make a commitment to excellence and you keep it. We're going to keep excellence in artistry. So
that was one of those things you said, where have you been? In all the magic, a lot of magic tricks from the Orient. When I was on the Great Wall of China, I stumbled upon this guy. I'm 15 years old. I've never left my small town. But all the paddle
I remember my talent show in high school. I had the Shanghai Shackle. It was this funny little escape effect. I remember vividly memorizing this. Of all the great mysteries of the world, none few have surpassed Shanghai, China. And I look back thinking, see that 16-year-old kid on stage talking about my late recent trip to the Orient.
So you talked about you were following your father around. Let's go back to that. Was your father in the military? Talk about where
he was a scientist. He is one of the kind of world's preeminent atmospheric physicists. And me and my parents got divorced. We lived in the West Coast, and then he got a job working as one of the directors of the National Science Foundation in Washington, D.C. So that brought him all the way to the East Coast. So, and that was, I had a choice. I said, well, do I stay with mom? Do I stay with my father? And I was like, cool, Washington, let's go. So I took a couple years and lived in Alexandria, Virginia. And then it was great because I got to visit Washington, D.C. a lot. In all the Smithsonian museums and all, climbing up and down the Washington Monument and hanging out on the steps of the Jefferson Memorial. And, it was an incredible life experience. But it was because of his career. I mean, the first time I went to London when I was 12 years old, because he was hired, went over for a conference. So he's going to speak in a big conference, and he's just like, here's 5 pounds, get lost, go. I literally was like, my sister's 9, I'm 12. We're on our own in London, figuring out the maps of the subways and the buses. All right, we're going to go to the zoo today. We're going to go see the King Tut exhibit at the National Museum, and I can't even believe it. Now you look back and think, oh my God, you would never do that with a kid today. Wow. He was just crazy. I mean, in that sense of just complete, it was good we survived, but total freedom, just complete. He would just give us enough money and say, look, we'll see you back here at 5, give us a map of the subway system and say, you can figure this out. Okay.
But he was educating you though. You were getting an education in the world. You figured out.
You damn right. Oh yeah. I mean, that set the stage for me, world traveling, because you have to be fearless. Yeah, exactly. Indelible training, even as a young teenager.
Our babysitter just got her driver's license. She lives with us, and she's 19 years old, and she could not get to the grocery store right now if her life depended on it. If the navigation in a car didn't work, she wouldn't be able to get there. It's different.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't let my kids loose in like Sydney or any big city now. It's partly just because the safety factor, and it's just a different world, unfortunately. Yeah.
So you have something on your website, Zoom Storming. Tell me about that.
The Zoom Storming series. Now I do virtual lectures, a handful of students training, and the Zoom Storming I run from time to time, which are basically a lecture series where anyone, magicians, it's you pay to come to one, or you pay for the group of 6 or 8 of them, and each one focuses on a specific aspect. Like you say, okay, we're going to really focus on the TT. We're really going to let's talk about the TT and all these possibilities. We're all going to, one of them's completely on the sonata. One of them's completely on the toppet. One say, all right, we're going to take sponge balls. I'm going to break it down. And so it's a 2-hour intensive, more of a workshop style, because it's a small group interaction. You can ask questions. They can say, and it's comprehensive. I'm trying to be as comprehensive of my own stuff, but really passing on. I'll say, this came from Patrick Page. This is where I learned this to try to teach them the history and the lineage of, I was really fortunate to hang out with a lot of these guys. Albert Goshman, I appeared on the scene right at the point where Albert Goshman was really in the later years of his prime. So I was on conventions with him on the close-up roundabouts. You do these round robin sections. So I got to watch him. I would be like after, and man, he was good. And I just I try to tell my students that he didn't do any of these silly slides. He went pop. It's here. And everyone just what? And I thought, and that's what the difference between what the pros do and or did is very different than the kind of the half wannabes are trying to teach. So I try to break through all that and go, look, let's talk SpongeBall magic. I saw the Grandmaster, to a certain degree studied under. So I try to give that, we're standing on the shoulders of giants. There's no question. And we have the responsibility to pass that on.
Right.
So I put as much as I can into the Zoom Storming. You just very intensive training sessions.
Now, how long do they last?
They're 2-hour sessions.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. So it's what is it? Is it like $20 a class?
Yeah, I keep them very reasonable for the content.
That is like a lecture. I mean, you're getting a lecture in your living room. You don't have to travel. You don't have to go anywhere. That's great.
Right.
Great. Yeah.
It's funny because, as you've seen, there was the huge wave of everything had to be online, and then when stuff opened up, it sort of dipped down, and people were overloaded on online stuff, and now it's coming back because people recognize that, wow, I can, someone who's halfway around the world, I can teach, I've learned from. So whether it's a private session or a group session, everyone's savvy for the most part with Zoom or a similar format. So I think it's like taking the best of both. I think they're taking the latest technology to teach this oldest of arts.
That is awesome, man. So are you also doing websites now too?
Yeah. I started you get all these strange things because, I was on the ground, like, in 1995, roughly, when the very first websites, AOL, the beep, 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 beep. Well, you're like your little kid, but you remember AOL, the dial-up. Yeah. And AOL had the first realistic platform for websites. And for me, it was, as a performer, we had to, back in my day, we had these things called press kits, and it was this folder which picked pictures and this and promotion and bios, and you had to send this damn thing halfway around the world sometime.
With those box videos.
Man, what's that?
With the VHS tape.
Right. It was this huge package. And
Yeah.
you know, and often you never even got the gig. You know, you're just like someone say, "Yeah, can you send me a press kit?" And oh, geez, yeah, got it. So to me, the website became the most obvious thing. I'm saying, so it's an online press kit. That was how I first addressed it. And so I built my first website, and then someone else would be like, "Oh, that was pretty cool. Can you help me with it?" And so I've been developing websites for myself and others, and all the magic festivals I produced, and any opportunity. And then all that knowledge, when we locked down, it's like, okay, there's not a whole lot of shows around. What can we do? So yeah, I basically take the same kind of focus of, how to present a magician, and how to present a cool website, and then keep with the state of the art of the design process.
Wow, that's awesome, dude.
Mhm.
So you're still taking new clients for that as well. So if somebody wants a website.
Oh yeah, sure, exactly.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, that's
I
awesome.
just built a huge one for John Kippen. I mean, it's in process. Websites are never truly finished, but this is a major multi-page, very deep, lots of videos, lots of information. So yeah, that's ongoing. And then each one you do, like a show, you do a good show, and someone wants, oh, come do my show. And so that's what happens. So I've done a half a dozen websites in the last year or so, some for my students. If that's part of the thing, you say, look, you can pay so-and-so this much. I can do it far less because we're already working together. If it's part of a process of, knowing them and helping them with their photos and advising them, here's what it, and a few of them have said, look, they want to build it themselves. I'm like, dude, great. The more you can learn to do it yourself, the better. So again, so sometimes I simply advise and it's like consult on helping them build their own websites.
So what about those amazing pictures you have on your Instagram and stuff? Are you designing those on your computer? Are you taking those pictures? AI involved? What is that?
I did. Well, there's a handful of shots. I dove into just AI art a few months ago, just on it's like, all right, let's play with this.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of just AI random, and I got to know what the parameters of just art. Just say, well, let's create cool visuals, and I've integrated some of those. But all the photos themselves, and I learned graphics processing. As a magician, you always have the choice to pay someone else to do it, or you learn it yourself. And I've never had any fear of learning. So I've been doing video production and graphic arts creation, and I know how to take a photo and crop it and make it look cool, and because it's got to be done. So I mean, even here I've set up a kind of green screen in the other room, so you can take photos or videos in front of that and then process them accordingly. This is a old school physical. This is not green screen, because I find for live performance on Zoom or something, green screen can sometimes look a little bit dodgy, or think your hand disappears or this and that. So I figured, all right, I've got some actual stages with the lights and such, but also a green screen background for when that's more appropriate, because then you can be flying through space, man.
And if you're teaching somebody a SpongeBob routine, and you have a green sponge and a green screen, they're not going to get
yeah, exactly. I mean, here's what's fun. I mean, I could pop this and woo, there's that. Whoa, I'll see if I can get this to work. Well, that didn't want to work. There we go. I mean, I've got all these hotkeys set up for like, woo, trippy, woo. So that's always cool to switch between studios. You say, well, see, I'm going to make a choice. Okay, boom, and you're flying down, and then I can reappear on the other. I set that up originally for the Zoom lectures and also Zoom shows. To make a Zoom show interesting, to make, it's like, okay, if we're going to pay me to do a Zoom show, let's have fun.
Yeah.
Use the techniques that we couldn't necessarily use on stage. So.
See, we never did that. We just set up the camera and just did our show as if we were in your living room. We did it in here. We set up the garage with the curtain behind us like you have there, but we never did the hotkeys and all that stuff. We just did our show and set up lighting and just went.
Yeah.
So
Good.
some people got way more involved. I was hoping it was just gonna be over tomorrow. So every day I was saying, I'm not gonna go deeper because it's gonna be over tomorrow.
Right.
I was wrong.
Yeah. But then again, it's how as an artist, we all find the way to express ourselves differently. And as long as the wonder is created, the people are happy, the smiles are there, that's what it's about, you know? So, yeah.
People did some really amazing stuff where they actually like redesigned their entire show they wrote a show just for Zoom. I just went and did the show that I was doing that season on Zoom. That's just what we chose to do. Yeah.
Yeah, I found this middle ground where I thought I want to make sure that it's the same as if I'm live. So in other words, if you're standing, I mean, I don't use, camera tricks per se. You know, some do, they'll reach off the screen and you go, okay, come on,
Or it vanishes and somebody's just grabbing it.
Yeah, right, and the hand goes off the screen and you say, yeah, you dropped it on the floor. Okay, So I that was sort of my criteria. That it's got to be still you're seeing, quote, live magic as if. So I'm, as you say, using essentially the same show that I would do live and presenting it to a camera or cameras. So, yeah.
I think we did like 15 minutes manipulation, 15 minutes of close up and interactive close up, and then like question answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we ended up doing. And it was fun.
It was a good learning experience.
But it wasn't a show.
It's not the same as live. No, you'll never replace live shows.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't have as many live shows now. It's still kind of, people are still acclimating to the things opening up. But there's not the same. Come on. Magic is meant to be seen live. Simple as that. You can't replace that.
Well, dude, we have flown by. We have like 4 minutes left. So,
okay.
I just want to start plugging stuff. How about new products? What do you have new coming out? Anything?
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things that it's funny when you're performing a lot, you get on a roll. There's all these things. One of these days I'll make some digital downloads. One of these, it's always these, and you're always looking for the next show or getting ready for the next tour. And when we locked down, I thought, okay, let's turn crisis into opportunity. Let me take all those things I said, one day I'm going to do this. And so with the same setup, multi-camera and, HD set for Zoom, I said, well, I'm going to produce a whole series of digital downloads. And so I produced like 60, anywhere from 10 minutes to 45 minutes to an hour training, digital downloads for magicians and, effect specific or gimmick specific. So yeah, I've got a whole bunch of those now. Now I got this huge library of digital downloads available. So that's my. Go ahead.
Those, how do I get them? How much are those, and how do I get them?
It's on jscottberry.com. I've got my store, my shop. Real simple. Yeah, jscottberry.com, and there's a whole shop with a shopping cart and all the secure stuff. A lot of demo videos. You click to the shop page, and it talks about the product, and and then instant download. So very practical. Mail has gotten really dodgy and it hasn't really recovered. I don't know why. The postal service jacked all the prices up and it still isn't as good as it used to be for normal mail. I try to send stuff and customers are like 8 weeks later going, oh, where is it? And I'm trying to track it and I'm going, oh, geez. So I don't do nearly as much physical product as I used to. And I'm actually setting up one of my students in Florida to actually make some of my stuff because he said, look, for all the guys in the US, it's so much better than me trying to, charge $20, $25 for a small, to send a small gimmick. So, yeah, but the primary things I have available are, I'll be doing the, private sessions and training, but lots of digital downloads.
That's awesome, man.
Nice.
And it's just jscottberry.com. What about your Instagram?
Yeah.
What's the Instagram?
J. Scott Berry. YouTube,
Nice.
J. Scott Berry /J. Scott Berry. Facebook /J. It's a unique enough name that I'm easy to find.
That's
and
awesome.
Most of the stuff's good. I mean, most of the things people will say about me is good.
That's awesome. I'm gonna put all these links in our Facebook group, man.
Oh, that's so cool. Thanks.
Thank you so much. You are awesome. It was great getting
Pleasure.
to know you. I had a blast, man. Only one
Likewise. Both of you, thank you so much. Appreciate being on here with you.
All right, dude.
Thanks.
1, 2, 3. See you next week.
Check us out online at wesisley.com and patreon.com/Wes_Isley for behind-the-scenes videos, blooper videos, never-before-seen footage, discounts on merchandise, magic trick tutorials, and more. That's Wes Iseli, spelled WESISELI.